let's get started. And first of all, let me introduce you myself. My name is Edu Jansante. You can call me Edu if you want, or Ed if that's easier for you. I'm your community manager. So I manage the EditorX community, and I'm here with Liat and Olena, who will be sharing a ton of really good stuff we're building for the OFFF Barcelona website. So we're going to show you the process behind it, and then we're going to walk you through what is that like in practice, like how do we show, like how do we build that, because you have so much going on. You have animation, you have hover interactions, you have repeaters, a ton of things, and we're going to do all of that for you today. We're going to actually even share some parts with you so you can actually build yourself. So super excited to get started. And as I said, if you stay here with us, we're going to share a contest that we're going to launch today for you who are building your websites. So it's a really good opportunity for you. And right, so I guess we're good to go now. We're good to go. So first of all, for our first part of the EditorX workshop, we're going to show you the OFFF Barcelona website. I want to introduce you to my colleague Liat. Liat's a designer and art director in our in-house agency, and she's going to show you a little bit more behind the thought process on how she built and how she thought about the design for the OFFF Barcelona website. So Liat, are you here with me? Just want to make sure she's on, and I think she is. Cool. Just want to make sure. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think you're on mute. There you go. How are you?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you, sir. Edward.
Awesome. All right, so the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Liat. I'm a designer and an art director at the EditorX in-house agency, and I'm going to share with you my process of designing the new OFFF site. I'm joined by Olena, one of our designers. She will be showing you a live product demo after my presentation. Our team specializes in creating websites for enterprises, brands, nonprofits, and influencers. Some of our previous clients include Sauber, Timothy Goodman, Print Magazine, Carly Kloss, Dazzle, and many more. So the process of creating these new exciting websites for OFFF was based on methods I've developed in my years of designing digital experiences and layouts. These methods helps me be more creative, innovative, and more open-minded. And I use these methods in all of my projects. So you can also take some of them and try them yourself in your own projects. So let's get started. Method number one is creating what I call a shopping list. It's basically a site structure or a master list of all the content requirements I need to include in my final design. This is the first step I take in any new design project I start. This shopping list helps me avoid getting any ideas about how elements should look like or behave within my design. It means that I don't start researching a specific web design trend. On the contrary, I keep my mind free from any design ideas. For example, this is my shopping list for the OFFF website. You can see how I simply named the first section as welcome. I won't call it a big video welcome or a gallery welcome. It means that I don't attach any design ideas to content elements yet. The same goes for the blog section. I didn't write a description for what type of blog it should be or what type of layout it should have, and not even if it's an image-focused or a text-focused layout. So one way to get inspiration for a blog is to look at other blogs, but it's just going to lead you to creating another versions of what's already been done. And we, the designers, always want to create something new and to push our limits. And that leads me to my second method, which is creating unexpected connections between fields. What does it mean? Let's take a look at some of my research process for the blog section. So usually blogs are heavy with content, and I was thinking in a different direction of a clean, minimal layout using perfect squares, which feels more designed to me, with images in the front rather than text. And since I'm not limiting myself to just looking at other blogs, I researched lots of different websites and I found these interesting examples, like the pink album covers displayed in the top left corner. Or look at how unique is that green site showing those large display icons. Or in the bottom, the clean, minimalist way products displayed in e-com galleries. And I was also inspired by this photography of the packaging and print in this perfect alignment. Anything that can make me think of unexpected solutions for layouts. So looking at all these other fields helped me open my mind to new ideas and to create my own new blog layout. However, it's not only the digital world that can inspire me, it can really come from anywhere, especially print. I really like to mix and play between those worlds. For example, do you see those 3 books stacking on top of one another? So I saw this physical stack and I translated it into a digital animation. Same goes for the pink and yellow poster and how I imagine the behavior of the yellow strip that overlaps the pink strip and hides the text. And the key is to keep on moving between those different worlds. So the last method I developed is one that usually comes with a good amount of design experience. This one I developed over the years and I find it extremely useful to my process. What I do is I identify and analyze compositions, and then I translate them into layouts. So this OFF website is for a massive audience. Thousands of designers like you visit this site. So ultimately, we needed this site to be functional as well as attractive enough to make our users engage and keep on scrolling and finally sign up. So for the welcome section, I wanted to make the typography big and bold with a clear messaging because I needed to showcase the lineup and center. And also to combine it with the clear CTA, the most important button in the site, so people can buy tickets. So I started to look for inspirations for the button itself. But again, instead of searching for a standard button inspiration, I was looking at all other kinds of shapes, interesting and bold ones from other fields that would be eye-catching too. So the result turned out to be much more interesting. Once I found the elements I liked, I saved them in my mind and immediately I translate them into compositions and to layout. And created this structure just a moment before I place my content and my visuals. Which turned into this final design. And as you can see, the third method allowed me to sketch these compositions and to create design in a much faster and a more efficient way. So let's take a look at the finished site. I hope you all agree that we achieved our aim of making it playful, interactive, and easy to navigate. So on the side here, we have a cool border with an endless scroll to navigate through the pages. The welcome section with its big and bold typography shows up the line up front and center, and look how the movement adds some fun to it. And here we have this important big button. I separated the buttons so it doesn't compete with the welcome section and comes after a bit of scrolling. And I also added some hover color to emphasize it even more. Check out how the button leaves the viewport, going out from the screen. This is something you will learn to do with Olena in the live demo coming up next. And then we have this perfect square grid layout with a surprise of color and these arrows that add some fun to it even more. And there are some scrolling background effects in this white section, so you don't miss this form to join the community. And then we have this surprise of the pink with stacking images of the artist. And as I scroll down the site, you can see how visually interesting it is. So the users can engage to the end. And lastly, we have this big black typography footer that overlaps the blue section and gives us a good, strong finish to the site.
This is so cool, Liat. I love that. Really, like, I mean, you guys came up with something so cool. But I have to ask you a question. What's your favorite part of the website?
Oh, that's easy. I think I really like the pink section, because after all these black sections and white also, I really like this pop of color, this pink that gives a surprise. So this one for sure, this one is my favorite. Yeah,
I like that too.
So that's all from me. As I mentioned at the beginning, these 3 methods can be taken and adapted to all your design process. Thank you so much for listening. Now you're going to dive into the Editor X with Olena, where you can try out these designs for yourself.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Liat, for sharing this with us. Really love it. We're going to actually have now more that Olena is going to cover. Just before we get into Olena, let me make sure that you guys are all right here with the Zoom setup. So there are a couple of extra buttons here you might be seeing. So you go to the chat. In the chat, you have an option to chat with panelists or to chat to panelists and attendees. If you select the latter, essentially you're going to chat to everyone. So that's really cool. So you can actually get to know each other, you can start talking and so on. So yeah, I see Josh just did that right now. This is great. And then if you have any question throughout this process, click on the Q&A. You can ask your question there. If it's a question that we can answer at the end, we're going to do it at the end. But if it's something that's a burning question that's coming as Olena is talking to you, we're going to try and stop her. I'll make sure that she can pay attention to us here, and then she can answer your question. So feel free to ask as many questions as you want. There's no limit. Really, like, feel free to also, comment up, on things that you're like finding new to you, things that you're like excited about. So we'd love to see that. Okay. Now, remember, guys, we have a contest that we're going to launch, and this contest is for you to share your best work. And I'm going to share the link at the end after Olena is done with her presentation, and she's going to actually walk you through the build of the OFF website. And also, if you want to get your Editor X premium account, if you email us in the next 48 hours at hi@editorx.com and you send us editorx@off 2021, and remember, off with 3 Fs, you're going to get a discount code. So you can actually, go into any plan you want, and you're going to get like a super special discount for this specific OFF team here. So super excited. I saw Pep that from the OFF team is also online here. Thank you, Pep. It's great to see you here as well. So guys, so now we're going to share a little bit more about the behind the scenes of the build. Okay. So Olena is going to walk you through 3 sections. First of all, the welcome section, that one that you see the repeaters. And she's going to show you how to build that. Then we're going to go over the blog with the hover interactions. That's a super cool one as well. And then we're going to share something for you so we can work with us on building the actual last part, the one that's the pink part, actually, the favorite part. So before we get there, let me hand over to Olena. She's also a designer in our in-house agency. Olena, thank you so much for being here with us, and take it away.
Thanks, Edu. Hi, everyone. Cool. Okay. So we're going to start with figuring out how this website was even built. And for this, we're going to roll back a little bit in time when we really had just a plan, just a sketch, and how we wanted to do it, how to build it. And this is how you basically will start every project, especially a project that you need to build later on your own on a platform like Editor X. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of general things, how we plan usually every project. So first of all, you're going to start with something that you know once you finish your design. And the first thing you know is definitely the typography. So you will create a type style for all of your type styles that you have, for all of the breaking points as well. And we have something that is called type and color themes. And you can see a screenshot here. I'll also show it to you in the live editor. So you plug in basically all of your type styles here and they become global. So every time you need to change and update across all of the site, you will really do this here. And this will be a universal change everywhere. Super handy dandy. And then like in this video that I recorded, basically I have a page where I set all of them on one page so I can see if the relationships are right. And then I'm going to go to breakpoints and like here and also see if this feels right, if the sizes are okay. And this is how I'm going to be working with type styles. So we have one thing done and our editor is not empty anymore, which is the scariest part when you start with a blank screen. Second thing is the colors. So the same approach here, we have color themes. And you plug in all of your color themes that you have decided during your design process. And then you can apply them from here. And every time you change them here in this theme panel, it will apply everywhere across your website and make your job much, much faster if any design changes come later on. So now when we have already set our main parameters, which is the color and type, we want to go over page by page, section by section, and figure out how we're going to build it and with which elements. So this is a super crucial point to save you time later on and also to understand how you're going to make your process work. So we're going to take a look at this welcome section here as an example. And this is how I start together with Liat. After we finish the design process, we go into this planning stage and we decide what are kind of the behaviors that we really need. And based on the behaviors that we need, we'll figure out what tools we're going to use inside the editor. So first of all, you can kind of take a look and see that it's broken down into a few important sections. I would say maybe 2 important sections here, just this one part. So the first section is here. This is the extended header, the black one with the description of what OFF is and the burger menu. Then there's a second kind of part to it, which is these 3 rows that Liat was showing you that they have movement when you do hover effect on it. So that's the second important part. And all of these 2 are combined kind of into one. Let me just show you the real website here. As you can see, when we scroll, the button goes over and then away, but these 2 elements stay together and they don't leave until the button is past the screen and then they both leave. So this means they're somehow related to each other and most likely they will be in some sort of parent kind of grouped together. So we'll see how we can do that, but just remembering that they need to be together because they respond to behaviors together. And then the third part of this one section is the big buy tickets button. And this one, we know that it needs to scroll a little bit later. It's not the focus point when you just land on the screen. Only after you scroll, it appears and then it leaves. So it's going to be a separate element. So based on this, we can already know that this section, this black welcome section, would be divided into 2. One is the this part with the 3 rows, the header, and then the second part would be the button. So this is great. You also know that the first, these 2, that they have to cover full height of the screen. This is something that we call 100 VH, 100 viewport height in the editor. And we're going to talk about some of these measurements. It would be also really cool if you guys look at the Academy link that Edo was sharing before. Everything is going to be even easier for you if you do some of the exercises we have on the Editor X Academy. And then, so once we figure this out, then I make another screen about notes of what's the behavior in terms of code or interactions. So here we had an interaction on hover and then every row would move. And then we also had code implemented, which would mean that every time you reload a screen, you actually see different artist images. So we can look at all of the artists basically in a span of time, and so many times you reload the page, we can see a full range of them. And then the button is also going to have a hover interaction. So when you hover on it, it turns white. So that's also something that we can do. And going back to this part, I want to talk about this 3 rows element. We were thinking in the beginning which tool to use and how to build it. And after some thoughts and looking at all the tools that we have in Editor, we decided that it's going to be a repeater. And why a repeater is because every item in the repeater is designed exactly the same way. So you basically need to design only one row, considering that every row will then repeat the elements that are there. So for example, we have text, arrow, image, and text, and it repeats in every row like this. So as you can see here, it's always text, arrow, image, text, and then it repeats just 3 times. So for this, and again, every change that I make, the repeater will take care of it. They will apply all of these changes. So now we know this is also a repeater, this is a header and a button, and I think this is enough for us to really start building it. Edu, let me know if that made sense. And we will start building. Cool, cool, yeah. Okay. So let's take a look at what we have. I have an empty page, empty section here in the ready page. And this page has some elements from the live site, and some of the other ones we're going to fill up together during this demo. So first, the header section we don't have yet, so we're going to build this one. This gray one is my assets that I saved from before. That's something that we can use and don't have to recreate them. This is basically just text. Then we have our blog section. Here we're going to apply hover interactions. We don't have them set on here yet. So we're going to do that together. Then we have this white form section, the videos. The pink looks very different here because we want to show you the structure and build this one together. It's going to be filled up together here with the button. And then we land on this black artist section with hover effects, with images. So this one we're not going to cover, but the principles here are applied exactly the same that we are going to cover earlier on. And then we have our sponsors and supporters list, and then the big map. So these are filled, and we're going to talk about the 3 sections. The pink one, the blog one is right here, and then we're going to build together the welcome section. And we're going to start with the welcome section. So I have an empty one here. Always scary, again, to start with an empty one. Good, I have other things here. And we're going to take a look at this section. 1 second. And the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the measurements here. So these are the universal measurements for just this section, but we actually need a little bit more control over here. We need to specify the number of columns, the number of rows, and what's really going to be inside the section. So we're going to remember this parameter, and we're going to actually say not the height 100 VH, again 100 viewport height. We're going to say that minimum height should be maybe 200 VH. And this is just so, and this one we will set to auto. This is just for us to really see what's happening. We will change this later. We select the section. I like to use breadcrumbs, but we can also always use layers here to see the structure. And I will hit apply grid. And I need to have 2 rows. So I'm going to apply the 2-row grid. And I will see this dash line, which means that the grid has been added, and I have 2 columns. So why I'm having 2 columns is because of this. This is what we talked about, where we have this header and this repeater being together in some sort of group. So I think it will be that these 2 will be in 1 row, and then the button will be in the 2nd row, and we will set up the sticky position behavior a bit later. So now we have the 2 rows. Let's go to adjust grid and just take a look at the settings that we have. So grids is like the biggest friend. You should be your biggest friend in Editor X. It's super handy, and this is where full control really comes. And we're going to start with something simple and then go into something a little bit more complicated with grids. Complicated meaning definitely more control. So here we have 2 rows, and we see these measurements here. These are the default measurements. And it's set this so it's a little bit more clear to you how to control it. But we need to change this measurement. So like we said that the first row, this one, has to cover the full height of the screen so we don't see the button. So for this, like we mentioned before, 100 VH. So this is the setting that we're actually going to input now. We're going to just say 100 VH, and it changes it. The VH is here, viewport height. And this means that we want this row to be 100. Okay, I would also like us to test this, if this is actually going to be 100 VH. And for this, I'm going to drag from the add panel a regular container into this column and row, just this one, not the second one. And I will stretch it. I just want to see if it's actually going to work. So design, I'm going to change the border to pink, and I'm going to have it at 2 points. And this is just for us to see how it's actually working. So let's hit preview and just take a look what 100 VH does. Okay, so we see a little bit of this border here, the pink one. And as I start scrolling, so what I want to see is that when I start scrolling, the border will right away go away from the screen, like scroll up, because this is supposed to be only 100. And it's doing this. This is exactly what we asked it to do, that it's 100. But it's a little bit hard to see from the screen share. What it actually is that this row is 100 VH, but it starts right here. So this means, but we wanted to start over here. So this means, what means is that this blue header is actually on the way, and we need to make sure that that calculation is not included. And so the 100 VH will actually end right here. So for this, we will go back to edit site and look at the measurements that we have, the measuring units. Let's go back to section, adjust grid, and see what is happening here. So it's definitely 100, but we want to take away the measurement of this blue header. And for this, we actually have a calculation measurement in the rows settings. So we're going to say that, okay, be 100 VH, but make sure that you take away the measurement of this other section that we know about. And that section is a 40 pixel height. So we're going to say be 100 VH, but minus 40. So be a little bit shorter than 100. And we're going to click done. And when we preview now, let's see what happens. So when we preview now, I'm scrolling, and actually I don't even need to scroll much. By 1 pixel I scroll, it's already coming up, which means that this container is exactly the space that I need. It's covering exactly 100 VH, but minus this area. So this is perfect. This is what we were looking for. And now we can fill this container up with our content. So we have our header here. I have it pre-saved, and I'm going to use this little blue drag icon, and I'm going to just drag this in. And when I drag, pay attention to the docking mechanism that's happening. So it's telling me which one is the closest line and to which it's docking. But we need it to be inside this pink border container. And I'm going to drag it over and all the way to the top. Okay, so now it's in this pink border container. I can tell that by the breadcrumbs here, or again in the layers. It's right here. Actually, let's rename this container to first row, just so we are not confused. Like to keep organized. And now we're going to select this container again, and we could drag it around to match it exactly where it needs to be, but I like to be a little bit more precise. And less dragging, but more numbers, I guess, if you like to say that. But I'm going to dock it to both sides. So it means it has a relationship with each end, and it's going to stretch to that left and right edge. And when I do that in margins, you see that it says 4.7%, that's this part. And then the same is on the other side. So I'm actually going to set it to 0. And the top margin, it says 116 pixels. I'm also needed to be at 0. So I'm going to put zeros everywhere. And this means that it's not going to be bigger or smaller than the screen width, because our container is the screen width. So whatever is this container, whatever is the section width, which is usually 100 VW, it's always going to be this measurement. Great, so we have this one set up, and we also know that this height is 100 pixel. We're going to come back to this for a second. And then we can move on to our repeater. So I'm going to go to the plus and add a repeater here from the quick add. I'm just going to drag it on stage and see how it says attach. So I'm attaching it to this area, which is our pink border container, because it takes the most space. And this is basically a look of a repeater, how it looks like. It has 3 items, and every time I will design an item, it will appear on all of them, and the design style will be kept the same. So I need to go to the repeater. I'm using breadcrumbs. I'm going to go to manage items, and I'm actually going to get rid of the other two because I don't want to be confused at what I'm doing. I want to see just one design. And then going back to repeater again, I'm going to change layout and select list. So we had a card layout before. Now I want the list layout, so I have actually full rows. And I'm going to say that the vertical margins, which will be the space between all of these list items, I'm going to set it to 20 pixels. But we're going to see it a little bit later. Now I have this item here, and I am actually ready to design it. So let me select this repeater. I'll drag it a little bit here so I can see. Okay, and now I have these elements. So these are the elements that are going to be used for the header section, this rows. And I just selected them and I copied them, and I'm going to paste them here. And now I can use them. So I have 4 of these. Let me change this pink background. Just take it away. Let it be transparent. And the arrow and the image. And then the 4th element is our second type element. So here, first type element, arrow, image, second type element. And we're going to now separate them into where they're supposed to be. And I like to have full control over where I place things and how they're related to each other and their width, so I can control them. And for this, I am going to use grids again. I will create a grid of 4. So each element will have their own column and just sit where they need to be, never overlap anything else. And I will also make sure that each element is indeed in its own column. So as you can see now, this image is probably not in one column, it's in 2 columns, whereas these type elements are probably in just their one column individually. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did for the header. I will dock left and right, and you see where it's docking. So yeah, this is the right column. And I will select zeros again everywhere, so it's exact. And I will also undock from top, which will center it vertically, because it's not docked to top or bottom. It's just basically vertically centered. I'm going to do the same for all of them. Well, all of the type. We're going to do something else with the icon here. So now the icon and the image. Let's do the image first. So let's just take a look and see which columns these are located in. We will open grid area, and the grid area is really handy if you need to specify exactly which column or which row an element should be in. Instead of dragging around like this, which you could still do, you want to really be exact, and dragging might not be possible in some scenarios, you know, if you have really little elements or really big elements. So let's see at what measurements this is. So it says that this image is between the column lines 3 and 5. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it starts at 3, which is correct, but we needed to end at 4. So I'm going to say that. And now it's in exactly the right column. And I will also make 0, 0 on the left side, align it to the left and top. And then I will do the opposite to the arrow. I will do top and right. 0, 0, just in case, just so they stay together grouped. So this is the composition I want them to be. But of course, we will get to this point where everything is equidistant. But just in case, I'm going to keep this composition. Now I want them all to all of these 4 elements to be centered vertically, even though we only centered vertically these 2 elements. But what's happening here is that we have a minimum height here. So something I mentioned before about the parent section, we have a 350 pixel minimum height. So we're going to want to get rid of this and also go inside the grid and get rid of it here. And what this will do, we'll select max content. And what this will do, as you can see, the height of the row is determined by the height of all of the elements or the biggest element that's there. So the image here is the biggest in height, bigger than the text. So now the column and the row will be this height. And now we see that the columns are all in 1FRs. So this is something that is also default. 1FR is a really interesting measurement that we use really a lot. But for this exact instance, we actually need to use something else. So 1FR is a universal 1-unit measurement and also fills up the space. If we want to have a control over what's the width of the column and for it to be dictated by the inside content, so like in this case, we actually want to use max content. So max content, as you can see, now this column is as small or as big as this text element. Once we fill the text, the correct text in it, this column will be much wider to fill this content. And we're going to actually do the same for all of them. We're going to select max content everywhere. So you see how the size of this arrow, I think it's about 16 pixels. So that's the size of the column now. And also the same here. And the same here. Okay, so everything is at max content. We want this, but once we did this, we see that we have like a gap in here. And this is actually correct because the content that is in here is smaller than the width of this item. So it just doesn't really have another column to fill the space. And for this, we will actually use 1FR. And I will use it on both sides. So I can center this content at all times, always centered, because 1FR will be taken from the space that's left over. And if it's both equal 1FRs on each side, it means it's exactly the same measurement of the columns. So this way it's always centered. And one more thing we're left here in this item is spacing it out. So we could create columns in between to make sure that they're always, the same measurement, which would be ideal. But we have something that is called gaps. And this is an even faster way to separate columns. So we can specify, let's say, 20 pixel gaps between all of the columns. So I just do this once and it applies to all the columns that I have. I'm going to hit done. And now we have our item designed almost ideal to what the original site is. I know it doesn't look like it because we don't have content, but that's something we're going to do now. So let's just drag this here. So first, I will also do the same that I did on other elements, making sure that the width of this item, the width of this repeater will be full. So full width. So for this, I see that the width is at 45% of the width of the screen. But I want it to be 100, or at least it could be 100, or I do this 0, 0, 0 everywhere, docking it to both and stretching it completely the width. So now it's that width, completely the width of the screen. And now let's go back to the repeater. I will go to manage items, and now we will duplicate them. And as you can see, they're identical. So the design is identical. It's kept the same. And all I'm left to do is really just to update content. And I'm going to hit save. We have autosave here, but I also have an old habit of keep saving. So I'm going to just copy this live text that we have on the live site. And I'm just going to copy paste. So I'm starting with the first one. I pasted the first line. Let me paste the second line. Take this away so I can see. And let's see what's happening. So we have a few things that are happening that are a little bit not what we originally planned, but this is not really a big deal. This is what the behavior is that we just need to adjust. So what it's doing is actually doing this correctly. Let me go back to the item. So I'll select the item and let's take a look at the repeater. Okay. So the repeater, we said that it's going to be docked to the left side and it's going to start exactly at it. So 0, anything, any measurement, 0 from that margin. So it starts exactly here. And then it ends also exactly at the right edge. So it doesn't look like it because there's more content that fits on the screen. And for this, we can actually not start this repeater exactly at the edge. We need to start it a little bit earlier. So to show you what I mean is here. So you see how it's coming from this edge of the screen from one side, also coming from the edge of the screen on the other side. So this means that this is actually, this repeater, this item is bigger than the screen. And we're going to do that. We're going to set it to be a negative margin. I will use percent for this. So I will say maybe start at -50% on the left and also end -50% on the right. So this now I have equal from both sides, but it's not 0. In any case, it's centered and it's going away. And now when we do the interactions on left and right, it's going to look like it's coming away from the screen on the left or on the right. And one more thing we see here that's also not something we expected originally, because we only had 2 letters and we couldn't see it, is that the content is actually going off. And if I scroll here horizontally, I can see this content. So what this is called is overflow content. And if we go to the item settings here, so you see there's a specific setting exactly for this scenario that is called overflow content. And right now it's on show. So everything that's overflowing the space that it's in is going to be in shown. We actually need it to be on hide. In some instances, it's also nice to do a scroll. So you need to do a horizontal scroll or a vertical scroll this way. So we're going to go to our repeater in the breadcrumbs, and then we're going to go to our pink border container here, which is our parent, in which this repeater exists, this first row container. And we are going to set the overflow content to hide here. So I'm hitting this. And let's scroll. Now I am scrolling horizontally, but you can't, it doesn't scroll anymore because it's hiding, and that's exactly what we want. But since we hid only the first row container, we can still do the hover effect on the items and they will show left and right and will be exactly like we have it on a live site. So let's go in and just update the rest of the content. I am copy pasting this Barcelona type here. And can you reach it? Okay, I'm gonna set this back to show just so I can see, but I will set that back to hide later on just so I can reach this text. And it's gonna be this one now. All right, and then this one. I am copy pasting. Okay, let's just get rid of some. Okay, so you can reach it. Copy, paste, and now let's do one more of this one. Copy, paste. All right, and I'm gonna go back to this blue, sorry, I keep saying blue to pink border container, and I'm going to set it to hide like it was. Okay, great. Let's actually hit preview and see what we have here so far. And then we will update images, but let's just see the structure. If it's looking similarly, what's the problem here now? What can we adjust? So it's looking great. This is actually just static now. We will apply interactions later on, but it looks exactly the layout that we have here. And it's almost, besides the images, the same content. We do notice that there's one adjustment of space that we really care about. So here, for example, you can see that the distance between this black extended header that we call, this space between this and the image, the first row, versus the space of this last row to the edge of the bottom of the screen is very controlled. It's a little bit here, a little bit more here, but definitely it feels centered on the whole page, on the whole section, versus here we have, of course, it's very on the bottom, we want to raise it. So what this means is there's some relationship between these two elements. Right now, if we go back, the way we just, dragged the repeater on the screen, we didn't really pay attention to it, but now is the time to really take care of it. Look at this repeater, it's docked to the top, and it's a specific number of pixels that it's docking to the top. But of course, we're doing everything responsive. We want, things to change and adjust according to the size, even the height of the browser. So to get this effect, we really need to make these two elements like sister and a brother, like they need to be somehow related to each other. So for this, I'm going to go to this pink border container now, and I'm going to also apply grid here. And I will select 2 rows again, and we will make sure that this container that is our header is in the first row. So let's go to grid area between row line 1 and 2. That is correct. We see a dashed line here. We'll adjust the size of this row. And then this repeater between row line 1 and 3. Okay, so we want it to be between 2 and 3. And we will take away also the top docking. We'll get it to be a 0. So now it's actually vertically centered within that second row. So now let's hit this container. Let's see what's the default measurements we are having here. So one is this minimum to be at least the size of the content, but don't be more than 50%. This is the default measurement here. It's useful in a lot of examples, but not for us. We need it to be either in pixels, because we know exactly the height of this row that we have. So we know it's actually 100. We saw that before. Or it could be in max content, because it's the same thing. It's going to be the size of the content inside. And then the second one, we're actually going to set to a fraction again, FR, 1FR. So 1FR is telling this grid row to be the height of the remaining space after you calculate this max content, which is 100 pixels. So now this leftover space is our row for this repeater, in which we have this repeater that is vertically centered. So now actually let's also change the images. So we have a full effect here. I have them preset here, and we'll change.
Hey, Olena, quick question. If people don't have the images, can they get some for free there?
Oh, for sure. So if you go to the plus and then media, so I have my preloaded here. You can preload yours, or you can use some of these single images that's from the Wix. They're really good images here, or you can go to show more, for example. And media from Wix has a lot of really good stock images that we create. Yeah, go ahead and feel free to use them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. So now that we finished that, let's preview and see if our spaces are matching exactly like we wanted them. Okay, so we have this. Our pink border here is still correct. It's 100 VH minus this area. We have the right images, we have the right content, and also the relationship between this and the edge here is really good. This is a little bit shorter screen here than our original, but it's really centered if you can compare this space and this space. So it's working exact. When we open our editor and a full screen publish, it's going to look exactly like the live site. And now this structure is done. So we know that these two elements are related to each other. Let me just hit save, even though it is already saved. Even though these two elements are related to each other, we know this, we got this done. We can now build the second important element on here, and that's the button. So I'm scrolling to the live site. This is our button. We will first just create it and place it, and then we'll do the position of this behavior of going over and away and the hover effects. So to start off, we have our buy tickets here text that I pre-saved from earlier. I am just dragging it inside this section. And again, this is the second row of that parent section here. Okay. And I'm going to recreate this button from scratch. So I'm going to go to plus, and what is a button? It's really just a container. So I'm going to drag the container on stage here. And now we can style it. I'm going to go to design, border. We had it at 4 points and white. And also the corners, I am going to round it to the maximum. And this is basically the style of our button. We're almost there. Now we need to place this text inside this button. So I'm dragging and I see the attach. This means it's going to be here. And I'm just going to drag this to the center so you can see. Okay, so the next step is to make sure that this button, this container that will be a button with text, is going to be the width dictated by the text inside. So the width of this button should be at least the width of the buy tickets or more for some margins and space around. So to do that, we're going to do something that we already did a few times, and I hope this one will not be super surprising, and that is to create grids. So we're going to create one more container, and we're going to stretch it, and it's in the second row of the parent section. Let's take a look at our layers. Okay, so we have this container, which is our button. I'm going to call it button. We have our first row, we finished with that, and now we have this other container. So this other container, we're going to hit arrange, bring to back. So it's in the back layer. So now we can work with it. And this button here, that's going to be soon a real button, we use this dragging handle and we drag it around just to make sure it's going to attach to this container of ours. Okay, so now it's in here. And we're going to call this container a second row. So now we have this in this black section, we have 2 rows from a grid. And we also have 2 containers that one is called first row and another one called is the second row. In the second row, we're going to apply grid of 3 columns. So I'm doing that. Okay. And now we're going to place our button inside one of these columns. And then we're going to control this column to really behave exactly like we want. So we're going to go back to grid area and we're going to place this soon to be button into the middle column of this second row container here. And that is column between column lines 2 and 4, but we need it to be between column lines 2 and 3. So this will make sure that this button is actually here. Now I know it shrank a little bit, and that is because this width is set to be 51% of wherever it's located. So we want it to be 100%. We can set 100, or we can do what I always like to do is dock it to both sides and stretch it this way. So we're going to make sure it's 0 and 0 on that side, on both sides, and undock it from the top and 0. So now it's vertically centered and it's inside the middle column. And we will go to this second row container and hit adjust grid. And let's see what measurements we have here. And we have OFFFs. OFFFs, we will switch to max content. So the max content, 1 second. Let's take a look at this. Ooh, look at this negative margin we created by dragging. So we will do this as well. We will stretch dock left and right inside the button. Okay, so now we stretch this text, made sure that there is no negative margin here. So it starts exactly at the edge to the edge. It doesn't start away like we have in the welcome section. We will also undock from top and vertically centered. And now with the use of max content columns, we have created a place where this container for a button will always shrink together and make bigger together with the text. And we can check that when we go to a breakpoint. We're going to still keep in desktop, but we're going to go to the smallest pixel point. And as you can see, this button is as short as this text. Or if we go to a 1920, for example, which is like a really big monitor, it's keeping that same size as the text. We just need to take care of the height now. We see that the height is a little bit different every time. And that is because we have a minimum height here on this container. So we're going to get rid of that. And now the height of the container is exactly the height of the text, which is what we wanted. But we also wanted to add some breathing room around this text. And for this, we can actually use padding, which is the easiest way to create space around elements so nothing breaks in that edge. And I think I will use a measurement of VW, which is viewport width. So it's like the viewport height, but just dependent on the width, not on the height. And let's start at 4 VW. What's the measurement? And I'm going to hit the lock to get it everywhere. Okay, 4 looks good. Let's just check it on like a smaller size. This looks pretty good. I think this is definitely our button. Okay, so now we have the button selected with text. Let's take a look. Oh, and this second row container, since we did the pink border before, let's do like a blue or green border now from our colors, just so we can see how these 2 rows are interacting with each other. Let's take a look. Okay, let's hit preview and look at our construction so far. Okay, so we have this, And we see that they're starting at the same point, both of these rows, because we have our containers, and then we have it finishing here, and the button is in the center, and it's going to be as responsive as we want. Everything is shrinking together. Great. So what's our next step? We will take a look at the sticky position now. And let me just go back to the screen. All right. And I'll make the breakpoint size just a little bit smaller so everything fits here on my screen. Okay. And let's take a look at the left side again. So what we have here is these two elements stay together. So what this means is these elements need to be in a sticky position, and they will be together in a sticky position as long as the button comes and then leaves, and only then it will all go away together. So if we scroll, we have button going over and then leaving. So let's sign up for a sticky position for this first section and see how it's going to work, how the sticky position really works. So we have this first container, first row container, and we're going to set it to be in a sticky position. Okay. And let's take a look. So I'm scrolling, and this is what happens. So what is happening here is, again, correct by the setting. It's just about us understanding how this is happening. So there's two things here. First thing is that we scroll, and only then this first row container becomes sticky. So we scroll for a little bit and then it gets sticky. And then the second thing is that, of course, there's some overlay here. It looks like the button is underneath, but we need it to be on top. So it looks like pretty easy fixes for both of these. So the first one, why it's happening, again, it's because of this fixed position blue header here. It's going up, this section is going up by 40 pixels. It looks exactly like that, and only then it becomes sticky. So for this specific example, we can use a setting that is called an offset. So we select, let's select this container, sticky, top offset. So we need it to be offset by 40, which is exactly where it should start, underneath this header. And then the second part is actually the arrangement of layers. So every time a sticky position comes up, it always means that it's going to be the first one in order. That's the default setting. And that is something that we just need to flip. So we will say that this first row container, arrange, bring to back. And this will mean that this layer now will be the bottommost layer of this section, and the buy tickets button will be on top of it. Let's double check this button. It's in this location, and the style, I think we should give it also a background color, which is black, full black, okay. And now when we preview, let's see if we were able to fix those things with 2 clicks. So I'm here, I'm going up, and this first container is not moving. It's staying exactly where it needs to be. And then the second row is going over, and they're all leaving together. So the arrangement worked, and the top offset is definitely made exactly for these purposes. So we can take a use of that. Great. I think structure-wise, we have one more thing here, which is, let's take a look at how it's in the left side. So we have the button, it comes over, then goes away completely, still revealing this content. And only then it goes away. In our example so far, we have that the button gets to the middle and then everything is leaving. So what this means is we just need to actually just give a little bit more space for this button to scroll. And we will go to the section, not the rows, we'll go to actually the section. And let's take a look now. So remember in the beginning, I talked about the minimum height here and everything. So now we can actually get rid of this because now we already have all our content. We don't need to see it. We don't need to make it bigger or anything. And now we'll adjust this. So we see that this shrunk a little bit. And this is because we didn't set any grid measurements to that row. So we'll go to our section, hit adjust grid, and let's take a look at what's happening. This first one we have set from the beginning. Now the second one, we never set this height of this row. So right now it's kind of on max content. So we need to set it, and we will actually use probably the same calculation. Oh, sorry. Let's start with 100 VH. So 100 VH will be covering the full height, but we then want to switch to calculation. It's just a little bit easier to type this way than to type on your own. So we will set it to 100 minus 40, the same one that is the top one. And then we'll create one more row. Maybe it's 100 VH this time. And this will allow this button to scroll past by 100 VH, and only then the section is finished. So let's take a look at the preview. Okay, so scrolling, this is the green container with the button going up here, exactly covering the height, going away for 100, or we could do a calculation also, and then everything is going away. Perfect, this is exactly what we wanted. I think now we can actually look at the interactions, which is the fun moving part of everything. The structure is done. Let's get rid of these borders. We don't need them anymore. We saw how they work and how all of the sticky position elements are interacting with each other. There's this green one also here. So we'll get rid of it. All right.
Yeah, Elena, just a quick one.
Yeah.
First of all, it's amazing to see how people are amazed by the magic that you're doing here. This is super cool. Super cool. There was a question that came in that I think it's worth asking. And that question is, when you're editing the grids, in which case you have like that max content, when you specify the minimum content. So for example, minimum content equals max content, or max content equals 50%. That was a question from Pratan. And I think it's worth checking, because he's aware of the max content, but how do you use the minimum content?
Okay, the minimum content is really interesting one, and it works for a lot of specific instances. So minimum content, let's think of things that could have a minimum content. So maybe I could set that the image will have a minimum content at some point. Or for example, text, if you have a word off, let's say you have 4 letters, so the minimum content would actually be 1 letter. There are instances where you need it. At the top of my head, and specifically for this website, we didn't really use the minimum content here. But if you need, for example, it to be like the text just show 1 character of the text at least, then like this would be your setting. There are also other tools for which minimum content would be used. I think also repeater or layouters would also have that kind of setting. But I think actually you will find a lot more information on units and measurements in the Academy. So maybe we can just copy paste that link again.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Let's do that. And guys, just make sure that you're following us here, that Elena is not going too fast or too slow. I think they're all like following their, like the feedback has been great so far. We're gonna get into the cool stuff now. So I actually want to ask you to invite your friends to join in. You know, if you have friends who are designers, who are builders, invite them in to join, because this is gonna get even better now. I can tell you, because I've watched this before and I've been with Elena before, so I can tell you this is gonna be really cool. So make sure you bring your friends in, people who are working in design in agencies, so they can watch this. So yeah. You can keep going there, Elena. Oh yeah, there you go, Pratan. Thank you. Hope that was helpful.
Wow, I'm excited to hear all that feedback, because I actually can't read the chat. It seems like I'm alone here.
Keep it to the end.
Yeah, okay. So we can move on to the interactions now, and you will discover that this is like a super fun feature, but actually it doesn't take a long time to learn. I guess it could be a sad part at some point. You don't get to play around a lot of it because everything happens so quickly. So let's take a look at the items here. Okay, so what we want to do, let's go back to the left side. We want to interact with every row and set this horizontal movement for every row. Let's take a look at the options we have. hitting an item now, and I'm going to this icon that says interactions better. We're gonna hit add hover interaction and click custom. We have some presets here, but of course we want to be super special. So we're gonna do our custom interactions. And what do we see now? We see a change in the screen. So this is a mode for interactions, and it's made this way so you're not confused. And it's very clear to you that you're in this editing mode. And we have one item selected here. As you can see, I can't select any other layers because we're in the interactions mode for this specific item. So now that we're here, we take a look at what are the panel options here we have. We have opacity, rotation, scale, skew, and translate. Translate is actually this horizontal or vertical, if you choose the y-axis, movement that we need for our welcome section. So we're gonna select the translate x-axis, and I think we're gonna use something like 8%. I've played around with these numbers before, so this is the ultimate one we want. But definitely all up to you. You can go all the way up and all the way down, whichever one you prefer. And that is actually all the movement we're going to use here. So this was literally one click and a number. And then we're going to take a look at this timing. So this is the panel in which every interaction that you add to any element will appear here. And this is kind of like your menu of things that you know you applied. And here you set up the timing. So the duration of this interaction is going to be from 0 to 1. And that seems to me like a good number because we have this horizontal movement and we need a little bit of time to take it. We don't want this to be too fast. It's not a button. It's not something that has to happen super quick and flashy. So for this, we are going to keep 1 second movement. And let's take a look here. We have another panel here on top that when we're done, we can just click done or play to see how it's going to be. Okay. And this is the timing panel. And also this state, you can see that we're in a hover state, but we can also do an initial state of the interaction. We will touch base with that later for another one. But for now, we're done. And we're going to click done. And we're going to click preview and see what we did. Let's see what's happening. All right. So I'm hovering and look what's happening. So remember that we use the repeater. So every item of the repeater, just like the design things that we just duplicated, created only once, the same logic applies to interactions. It will also be copied inside the repeater, and I just did it once. And because I'm doing every other row, you know, one is going left, another one is going right. So it's creating this movement that everything is going different directions, when in fact we have one single interaction for 8% going one way. And that's creating this amazing effect in this really quick way. So that's really what I meant. It's super quick. Let's go back to the edit site and take a look at the button interaction that will have, and I will again click save because I have an old habit. Going back to the button. Okay, we're going to select this container. We named it a button because we like to keep organized, and we're going to add and custom. Okay, so now again, everything is in a different mode. Now we're in this button interaction mode. And we haven't added any interactions yet. So we're going to do that first. Since the button container is already selected, we see that the color is black. We're going to change it to white. And look, this appeared here. So we know this happened. And we select text now. Just click it on the canvas or in the layers. And we're going to change the color here to black of the text. So we're reversing the colors. And now I think that 1 second default is a little bit too much for us. This is a button. It needs to be pretty quick change. So I'm going to go with 0.1, from 0 to 0.1 here. Okay, click done. Let's go back up and let's click preview again and see what's the result here. So the button one was 2 elements, so like 2-ish clicks. This one is working. I'm scrolling up and I'm getting the hover interaction for two elements inside of this container, the container and the text. And it's already done. Basically, we're finished with this welcome section and the interactions, and we can move on to the blog section here. We'll also delete this gray section, we don't need it. And here we're going to apply a little bit more interactions because there's more elements here besides just a button. So we're going to work on something like this, where we have a color change of the background, the text is changing color, and also a rotation of these arrows. And the arrow is also changing color from white and black. Let's edit. Let's do some interactions on that blog post. Okay. Scrolling down. Okay, we can get rid of this. I'm just hitting delete key. And now let's go to the blog post. Okay, I'm selecting an item. Again, this is a repeater, so our job is 6 times easier. There's 6 items here. And we're gonna go to the interactions, add hover interactions on the item, custom interactions. Okay, and now we have a window. I also like to use layers for this, because sometimes in this case, you have a lot of small elements that kind of not convenient to grab like this. So layers are going to keep you super organized. You're going to go to the color background, and we're going to change it to green. And you can see initially everything is changing right away on your screen. Okay, so this one changed. And let's go back to black just for a second. Okay. I think something's happening with my internet. So we're going to do this again. I'm going to hit delete and add hover interaction, custom interaction. Select the item, change color. Okay. And then we're going to go into each one now. So we have 2 text styles. One is the date. It used to be white. We're in a hover state right here. Click it to black. Okay, close. Then this body title, post title, used to be white. Also, we want it to be black. Okay, and now the arrows. Okay, so we have this arrow, which looks like one. Let's take a look. It looks like one arrow, but actually it's 2 arrows. One is black, one is white. And we're going to make sure that the black one is only going to appear on the hover state and the white one will stay on the initial state. So this is where we can take care of the initial state here in this box. So this container hosts 2 of them. You see I named the layers white and black. So we're going to select the black one. Okay. And we're going to say that on hover, your opacity should be 100, which is correct. But if we go to the initial state, the black on the initial state, opacity should be 0. And this way it appears in our timing. And then the white, we will do reverse. So we'll say initial state, white arrow, opacity 100, and white arrow in the hover state, opacity 0. And you can see even here in this preview here mode that it's doing that. It's doing exactly that. And let's take a look at the numbers here again, the timing. So again, and 1 second for something like this that kind of acts as a button is a bit too long. So we're going to do 0.1 duration for all of them instead of 1. Okay, 1 more. So now we made all of the color changes and we adjusted the timing period for each of them. And you see it's quite a lot of elements here that all of them are going to be interacting at the same time during the same time period, 0.1 second. We have one more thing to take care of in terms of interactions here, and that's the rotation on hover here. So we're going to rotate the container in which we have 2 of those arrows. And we have a rotate adjustment here. So on the hover state, we're telling the rotation to be a 360 rotation, which is a full circle. So on hover, please do a full circle of this container. And we have it set here. And you see that it's also default to 1. I think that 0.1 is too quick. So our eye probably won't catch this quick rotation. It will just look like really changing quickly or flipping even. So we're going to go with something like 0.4, which should be enough for the small element to really rotate full circle and our eye to catch it. So that's the selection we're going to make. And we're going to click done. Okay. And it's auto saved, and we're going to click preview. All right, we have our first, second interaction, scrolling through, and we have our third interaction, which is our rotation, the color change to green, black text to white text, and it's looking exactly like our live sites. Edu, how cool is this? We did like, what, 3 clicks in average for each of them, and it was really quick. Let's go back to edit site. I think at this point, we are ready to dive into the pink section, which is Liat's pink section.
Nice.
Cool.
Olena, you're missing the feedback here, but people are loving it.
Wow,
they're saying you
I'm
explain it
super
so
happy.
well. And even for people who are new to Editor X, they're finding this super helpful.
Wow, that's a pleasure to hear, really.
Yeah. So are we ready to go to the next part?
Yeah, let's do the Liat's favorite section.
My favorite section as well. I love this. So guys, before we get into this section, actually, this is a part where you're going to join us. So if you look at the link that was shared in just below here in the chat, you're going to be able to open it. Make sure that you have your Editor X account. If you don't have one, it takes you 2 seconds to set up one. It's super quick. And then you can actually do that at the same time. So you can actually, if you have 2 screens, it's going to be easier. If you don't, you can share your screen in half. So you have Olena on one side, and then you have your Editor X on the other. And then you can do that. Also, I want to remind you that if you actually want to get your premium account, if you send us an email to hi@editorx, you can just put in the subject line editorx@OFF 2021. And then in the next 48 hours, we're going to give you a super discount code so you can actually, get your premium plan. So that's fantastic. And next one, which is like probably the one that I'm most excited about, is the contest that we're going to run. So we're going to do a contest that's actually starting today as we speak. And you're going to actually have the ability to submit your best website creation. So if you have a super cool website that you built and you want to share that work, you can submit that. There's going to be a super cool prize if you win. The link is going to be shared right after this, because otherwise you're going to forget us here. So wait for this to be over, because Olena is going to share this like super cool next piece on how she built this. So just before you do that, just make sure you follow us here. Make sure you got the template. So the template is in the chat. There's a link there. I'm going to paste this again in case you couldn't see it. I'm going to just make sure copy and paste here again. There you go. So you can open up on the right-hand side, and then we're going to be ready for you. Let's just make sure you're all good. Cool. Again, Olena, I think, oh my God, so many cool comments here.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to see like the recording afterwards. It's going to be available later, so you can actually download and not only download, but you can actually watch this live on our academy. You're going to go to editorx.com/academy/webinar, and you're going to be able to watch it from there if you missed some part. I know some people probably had to drop. Some people are coming back. Some people are just coming in now. I know it's like still like some working hours, depending on where you are, time zone wise. So don't worry about that. Okay. Yeah. So some people are saying like, I don't have the access. Don't worry about that. If you missed some piece of the content, we're going to have the recording. And again, just go to that template I shared in the chat, and Hiri also shared that as well. So you can click on that link, the tiny URL link, and then you open up on a separate screen so you don't drop here. And then you can follow us. Well, I can follow Olena because I'm going to just be watching here and learning myself. Cool. Are you guys ready? Okay. Are you ready there, Olena?
Yeah, I'm ready. I hope everyone is also ready. But in any case, you can watch the recording if you didn't make it on time, didn't open the template now. So let's move on. 1 second, I'll open my settings panel. Okay. So we now are reaching the pink section, and this one, I want you to really, really see how we build the construction of this section. It's going to seem like it's very long, and it is, but it has to accommodate, you know, every single image, which we want to show really big because it's an artist featured website. So we really need to see all these images huge. So you will see these layers in your pink section. So I have it called Pink Academy section. And then inside I have 4 main layers in which I have more things, of course, and grids because they're fun to work with. So first one is called 4 images and a button. So this one is the biggest container that contains all of the images that we show in a stockpile here. So the container, it's invisible, but we'll take a look at it. It has this image and this image and this image and this and a button. So that's the first layer. Second layer is header and titles. So this one holds the information, the title. You can edit it and make it your own. Then the third one is called top text. So this one is small description of whatever this section is about. In our instance, is the OFFF Academy description. And I also have here a button here that links to the Academy. And the last layer here is called outline plus vertical. And that's the black outline that you see here. And it's bigger than all of the other containers because it acts kind of like a frame. And it also has inside of it this vertical text that we have also on a sticky position. So let's take a look at this, this 4 images in the BTN layer, a button layer. And we're gonna go to selected and go to adjust grid. It's kind of large, so just scroll through to see this panel. And we're gonna go to edit grid. And now we'll land again in the grid settings of this very large, long container that will have all of our images. Let's take a look how we build the sections. So you will see here something that we already discussed before. This is the use of 100 VH, because for this site, we really wanted everything to be in whatever is the focal point of every section to really cover it completely and give it the most attention. So in this way, every image of the artist is super important. We want to focal point it, so it's going to be in the center. So every colored box is where we're going to place the images, and it's at 100 VH. So you take a look, it's all of them are 100 VH. Even the button one also will be at 100. Then inside of this layer of 4 images in the button, we have these color containers, and I call them image containers so we can see which one goes where. And I will start with this green one. So after we finish the sticky position and the piling event, we will take away the color, and these containers will just be transparent, but they will be holding our images. I want us to really see how this, using this color of the background, to really see how this layering effect will happen and what's giving the height and how the width is responding. So this color just really helps us see. But once we're done, we'll just get rid of it. So I'm going to open my settings panel here, and I'm selecting this first green one into which I will drag the first image. So I will go to the media and I will go to show more. And I have some presets here. I have the images already here, but again, you can go ahead to media from Wix and select anything here for practice, or upload anything on your own. So I'm going to go to my folder. I have this image that is exactly the same we're using, and it's being placed at the top of the section. So I will just drag it inside this green. I see attach. Okay, this means it's dragged actually there. And now I will, hold on 1 second, moving this. Okay, center it horizontally and vertically using these align tools here. And now it's, you see it's undocked everywhere. So that's exactly the perfect center. It's when everything is at 0 and then everything is undocked. It's the same if we use these alignment tools. And now we want to make this image bigger. So this is the most bottom image on our left side. And it's also horizontal, which is usually the size of the screens. So we want it to be super big and fill the most that it can. So I'm going to start at 80% width. And maybe I even want to go more, maybe 85. So it feels a little bit even more. Okay. So now it's like really, really bigger, much bigger. I can even set it to 100. This is really a design decision. Whatever is your image, maybe you start with a portrait, so it will have a different dimensions. Okay, so now this image is here in this container, in this colored container, and this colored container is inside the parent that has 100 VH row height. Great, so now we're gonna go to the second image, and I'm at the blue container now. I'm gonna go to plus. I have actually the gray image that I want to use here in the site files quick access, but otherwise, again, just select the image that you would like, and I will go to these alignment tools and I will do 2 clicks and it's going to center it vertically and horizontally for me. All right, just making sure undocking, great. And now we need to check. So this one is 85% width. So clearly this is going to be not 85% width because this is a portrait. So it's actually longer by height. So I'm going to go with 50 for now and see what it is. Okay, 50 looks good, but just to show you something, I will go also to 80. And what we see now is that the image is actually being cut off here. And we can leave this. This is going to be a design decision that you would want, but the stickiness will be like this. So if it's top, let's say docked to the top, and whatever's left over after the height of the image will just be sticky. You won't really see it. So at this point, this is a design decision. So I'm going to go back to 50 because this is the closest that we have to the original site. And this is how we were building it. Now I'm finished with this gray one. I am going to add my next one. And for this one, I'm actually going to drag whatever image I have here first and do a different method, how to update an image. I'll go to change image. So I just dragged any image on stage and then I'm going to go to change image and just select the right one. And I have this here and I'm just going to adjust this ratio and go center vertically and horizontally. And since this one, it was also vertical, a portrait, and this was at 50. This is kind of closer to a square, but maybe not a 50 because I want to have a stockpile effect. I think even like 38 maybe, so it's different and it's going to be on top. Great, and now I'm up to the orange part, the orange container, and for this I have this blue image in a quick add. And I will center it vertically and horizontally. And probably the width should be maybe 25. Okay, so it's like really different and the stockpiling effect will really create this effect because all of them are different. And I also see that I have 8.4 margin, so I'm just going to keep it at 0, making sure that all of them are, I need to see all zeros here on the bottom for margins. Okay. Okay, we have that, and we have a preset button here, and we know that it's vertically centered and everything. So we're just working with our images. Okay, so now it's not in, nothing is set to sticky position, so it's just a long scroll of these images. Now let's take a look at the sticky position. So we'll start with the green one. I'm selecting the green one, and I'm going to the scroll and scroll effect. I'm going to set to sticky. And let's see what's the result that it's giving us. We remember a few things that in terms of layer arrangement, that the stickiness default brings it to the top. So let's see if it's actually the case again here. Okay, so we're scrolling and yes, it's becoming sticky. And then you can see this scroll bar here that I am scrolling down, but you just don't see anything changing on the screen. And that is because that the sticky position made this exact green container be the first layer, and it's covering everything that's happening underneath, and we just don't see it. So the solution here could be the same that we did before, which is just to arrange it to the back. But since we have other containers that also are going to be at a sticky position, we don't really need to do that, because every time now that we create a sticky position, this layer will become on top. And since we're doing this in order from the bottom to the top, we don't need to do the arrangement of layers. It will be done automatically. So we did the green one. Now let's do the pink one. We'll create it in a sticky position, the white one now. So now the blue became on top. Now I made the white one sticky, so that became on top. Now I'm doing the orange one sticky, and it became the top layer. And I'm doing this transparent, already transparent one for the button with the 3 columns, exactly built the same way we built the buy tickets one. I'm gonna create scroll effect, sticky. And now this is the most top layer. So in this instance, we didn't really have to do this additional arrange, because we're doing all the other ones also sticky. So I'm hitting preview, and let's see how it's working. Okay. So yeah, every time, so now the layer order is correct, and the stickiness is happening in order that we wanted. We just have these colored boxes to get rid of, but basically the behavior is exactly like we wanted. And the bigger image on the bottom, vertical then, and then a smaller one, and then a blue one, and then the button, which also has a hover effect on top of it. So let's get rid of the color boxes, and we will finally publish the site and open it in a new tab with published version. So container, selecting container, going to design, and I'm going to get rid of the background, make it 0. Blue, make it 0. White, 0 opacity background, and orange. And this one is already transparent. Okay, and I'm gonna hit publish. And I have this open. So this is where, this is a published link, but from before, I haven't reloaded it. And this is how we started. If you guys remember, we had empty section here, asset section here. This one didn't have interactions, and this one was colored. So now I'm going to reload this page, and we're going to take a look at our final creation with the structure correct. The interactions are here. We're moving side to side. As you can see, the measurements are correct. So this repeater here is exactly in the center of the screen. We have the button going over, has interactions, going away, and only then everything else is going away. Then we have hover interactions on this block section with our blog posts in perfect squares. And scrolling on, we have our favorite section, the pink one with stockpile effect of images, and the button that also has a hover effect. How do you like it, Edu? How's the reactions over there? I can't read anything.
That's amazing. Well done. Oh my God, I'm super pumped. This is super cool. It's insane. Like, I mean, how fast you got that done, and really well explained. Everyone is loving it. I'm actually going to read some of the comments. Love it. Very good instructor. Amazing. Awesome. Love this. Thank you so much. It's all for you. Really good. Thank you so much, Elena.